download on
Oh,
your computer.
yeah, then I'll share that. Okay. So just share the screen again. Sorry. That was this. Where was it? Microsoft PowerPoint. This session. Share. Yeah. So, hi.
Perfect.
Hi, my name is Alireza Sherafat. I'm an academic foundation doctor in East Midlands. This session is an introduction to a series of sessions we are going to have on preparation for application to a specialized foundation program, SFP. It was previously known as the academic foundation programs, and still a lot of places we refer to that as academic foundation. So if you have any objections to recording, this session is being recorded, please feel free to let us know, or you're more than welcome to leave the session if you need to. So this is for the benefit of those who cannot attend the session at this time due to commitments such as placement. So with regards to the session we have prepared today, there are a couple of examples of things that you may encounter during the application process, and also some tips and advice, but overall it's a basic introduction. So let's go. And just a bit of background about myself. I did MBBS at University of Central Lancashire in the Northwest, and following completion of medical school, I applied to a specialist foundation program. I applied to West Midlands and East Midlands, and I received an offer from both. And at the moment I'm in East Midlands. Due to the rotation, I basically decided to choose East Midlands because it had more surgical specialties in the 2-year program. And also, as part of my academic training, I've got an honorary fellowship with the University of Leicester as well. So that's about me. So this session focuses on introduction to SFP, application process, deadlines, and tips on drafting white space questions and interviews. So my colleagues in SORN have helped me a lot, Devi Kalan and other colleagues, in putting this presentation together. So many thanks to them for their help. So SFP, so it was previously known as AFP. A lot of doctors doing the specialized foundation program still refer to themselves as academic foundation doctors. So the term can be used interchangeably. And surprisingly enough, when Health Education England emails you with regards to your application process or like accepting an offer, they still refer to the program as academic foundation. So they haven't changed their templates in some ways. At least it was like that last year. So it's a type of foundation program that allows doctor to have dedicated time to complete an academic work outside clinical commitments. And there are usually 2 types of that. There's a type that you get a whole block to do an academic work. So for example, each block is like 4 months roughly in the foundation program. So we have 6 blocks of 4 months. Sometimes, and it is usually in F2 that we have the dedicated time. Sometimes we get one whole block 4 months to do a research project, and with a supervisor. Sometimes we can change the supervisor, sometimes not, depending on the academic unit of application. But overall, the different types, and a certain type is like you can have 1 day per week for the whole year during F2 to do an academic work, and that is like the program I'm doing at the moment. So I'll get 1 day per week next year to do academic work, and my track is research track. So you do not have to be an SFP doctor to pursue an academic career, but it just gives you protected time. You can still do audit, quality improvement projects, research, case report, teaching, leadership projects, whatever in your hospital as a foundation doctor, but just SFP or AFP, previously known as, can just facilitate that better in a way that basically you have the dedicated time, you're paid for your research work, and you can get a study leave, and you can get like a study leave to attend conferences, you get the budgets, and basically it has some advantages which helps you, but it doesn't necessarily mean if you don't get an SFP job or an previously known as AFP job, you won't be able to do research, or you won't be able to do QI projects or teaching. So it's just a way to make it easier only. So application process, you have to apply for the standard foundation program, as I'm sure you guys who are attending, or those who will be attending later are fully aware. So the application process is similar in a way to other applicants applying to foundation program, normal foundation program, as the deadline is the same deadline. So you have to apply for the standard foundation program before you can apply for the SFP. So it's basically on Oriel. When you apply for foundation program, it gives you the option to apply for SFP and foundation priority program, blah, blah, blah. So other things as well. And they keep changing that each year. So you will have the opportunity to apply for, in fact, more than one job. There are thousands of jobs under normal foundation program. So in theory, all final year medical students applying should end up with a job. A lot of people last year went to the waiting list, but eventually, as far as I know, almost all of them got a job. But a specialized foundation program is competitive in a way that almost only 5% of jobs in the UK are academic. So it makes it, in fact, more competitive, and you need to, as I'm sure you know, you need to apply for it separately. You need to do vital space questions. It's a bit like applying to medical school. You have personal statement in medical school application. Now you have vital space questions. When you apply to medical school, you have interviews. Then again, you have interviews in academic foundation. So for me, it felt like going through medical school application again, in a way, which wasn't really nice, but we made it. Anyway, so for standard FP, United Kingdom is separated into 19 units of application, and those are the deaneries. But for example, for a specialized foundation program, the academic job, we have a slightly different allocations. In fact, allocation system is slightly different in a way that basically West, Midland, North, Central, and South are 3 separate deaneries. But for the SFP program, for the academic units of application, for academic units are like one unit, one whole unit. For example, I applied to East Midlands, which is itself 2 deaneries, LNR and Trent, but for academic unit, it's slightly different to the normal foundation program. Okay, so your scores. A scoring system for normal foundation program is generally standard. For SFP, each academic unit of application does it differently. And it's very important for you to go and check online on their websites, because there is a significant variation between academic units. For example, some units may score you based on your, in fact, some themes are basically shared. For example, all of them looking for posters, presentations, publications, QR projects, distinctions, prizes, awards, and stuff like that during your medical school, as I'm sure you are aware. So basically your CV, and you put that on the separate categories, but they score it slightly differently. For example, some deaneries look at your publications, and based on your the order of authorship, they score it. For example, if you're first author, no matter what sort of publication is that, you'll get the highest mark. If you are like second author or third author, you won't get much marks. Some of the academic units of application look at your number of publications, and the more publications you have, the more score they give you, no matter if you're first author, second author, or last author. So they don't care. Some deaneries consider like some academic units consider some awards as like eligible for points, and some may not. So you need to check that with your academic unit of application. So for foundation programs, there are 100 points available. 50 points come from your EPM, which I'm sure you know is your decile ranking at medical school, and each medical school does it differently and how they calculate that. But you should by now, I think, know your decile. So basically, if you're in the first decile, in the top decile, then you get 50 points, and if you're in the bottom one, obviously, as you go down like 1 point, you lose 1 point per decile. So, and SJT also 50 points. And there are resources available for SJT, just very short advice on SJT. There are like SJT official resources online. I do recommend, I do strongly recommend that you review those before doing SJT. So, and the deadline is basically 20th of September, but just do double check that, because last night I was on Twitter reading some tweets from UKFB, UK Foundation Program, and they have, as far as I know, they have extended the deadline for a day due to the bank holiday on 19th. So please do check that. I believe due to the national mourning basic period and the Queen's funeral on 19th, they have extended that for a day. But I think it's 21st now. But I haven't had the chance to double check, and sorry, I didn't have the chance to update the slides as well. Just read that last night. Okay, so and then you have your medical school performance 41 to 50 as we discussed, and then SJT, and then you end up with a score in total. And SJT, it's a bit difficult to predict, and I would say maybe look at the stats before from your medical school. It should be available on foundation program website, and then roughly see where you will be, because it's a slightly difficult, because you first apply to foundation program and then you find out your a score in SJT. So it's a bit of a difficult thing to guess. So then we have SJT specific dates and deadlines. So SJT booking window is fair to 7th of October, and do keep an eye on these deadlines, because then they are basically exams will come down full very quickly. So you need to keep an eye, and whenever they advertise it, you just need to book it quickly as you can. Situational judgment test window 1 is 7th to 20th December. And then 19 to 23rd is the second window, but almost 2/3 of people do it in December. That's what the stats suggest from previous years. So SFP application. So on completion of your normal foundation program, you can begin your application for SFP. You can apply for 2 units of academic units of application, despite the fact that for FP foundation program, you can rank all foundation program, in fact, foundation deaneries or foundation schools, like 1 to 19. Yeah. So based on your preference, but for academic foundation, you only can apply for 2 places. So make sure that you really want to go to those places, and make sure that you have done your homework before that. So basically, do search about them, do read about them, and choose wisely, because there are only 2 options available. The application is similar to standard FP, but you have some additional sections that you need to answer. And so, for example, you have white space questions, and each unit of application does it slightly different. So some units of application need white space questions before you're submitting your application. So at the same time, in fact. And some units of application, academic units, they send it to you later. And as far as I know, like there's some particular areas that send it to you like few days later than you submit the application. And also the way they score it is different as well. Some units of application put a high weight on that, but some units not really are interested in that. But overall, it's an important part of your application, because for academic foundation, they won't consider your SJT. So SJT is what of normal foundation. They will only consider your decile ranking and your performance at medical school, okay? And they will only, in addition to that, they will only consider your white space questions and your application, basically, number of posters, presentations, research projects, awards, blah, blah, blah. So everything that you have done, they put it together, they give you a score, and they rank you against everyone else, okay? And depending on the number of places they have, they send an invitation for interview to almost 2 or 3 times the number of places they have, depending on the academic unit of application. So if they have 50 places, they send it to 100 to 150 applicants, like plus or minus 10%, something like that. There's a variation. Each deanery does it differently. But anyway, so you need to make sure your white space questions are quite well written. And I'm sure as medical students in your final year, you're aware of a lot of important things that we consider in medicine, such as being able to work in a team, being able to communicate, giving examples, and stuff like that. Okay, so you need to understand more about your aspirations for pursuing an academic career. You need to persuade the interviewers or the people who are reading your application to consider you for an interview that you are genuinely interested in an academic career, and that is a clinical academic career. So you need to make sure that you send out the message that you're a clinician interested in research. Yeah, so that's the whole purpose. And you're a safe clinician as well. You're a safe doctor. So number of questions vary in each academic unit of application, and it's usually 250 word count per question. So it's like an essay. You can consider a couple of essays, a series of essays, and I'm sure you have written a lot of essays at medical school. And you need to have supporting evidence or additional achievements that will help you stand out. For example, if you've done a presentation, a project, a research internship, you can use those as well. And examples can be publications, presentations, and degrees. So if you have done a master's before or a BSc or an intercalation before, please include that and talk about that, and they would love to hear about that. But if you haven't done a degree before, if you haven't done BSc or an intercalation degree before, that's absolutely fine. You can still apply, and it doesn't mean that you won't get a job. No, not at all. I did not have any additional degrees in addition to MBBS, but I still ended up with 2 offers. So that's absolutely fine. You can apply. But I had publications and posters, and I didn't have many awards, to be honest. I only had like 1 distinction, but I had quite a few publications, about 6 at that time. It was 6. I have now more. But and I have a few posters as well. But apart from that, not really anything in that sense. But I still end up with 2 offers, so that should be fine. Or even if you have a degree and you don't have publications or posters, that's still fine. You should apply as well, because your degree, I'm sure, will be giving you a lot of marks. So don't underestimate your application, don't underestimate your achievements, and go ahead with the application if you are interested in academic work. And they're looking for keen people. So you necessarily do not need to be a researcher by background when you apply. So they're looking for people who are able to learn, who are nice, and who can work in a team, who are pleasant. So consider that. So you can apply to maximum of 2 units of application, and you will rank them in you will rank the tracks, the different tracks. So basically, they usually have different tracks, different university hospitals, different research institutes. So please go through those tracks quite carefully, because it's going to be your job. And when they make an offer, they only give you 48 hours to decide. So the first round of offers, we have some slides on that later on, come in January, and they only give you 48 hours to choose. So please do your research before applying, rather than only like when in that 48 hours period. So remember to only preference rank the tracks you're interested in. Okay, so, and you're unable to link SFP applications. So basically, some people, due to their circumstances, they can link applications, but for SFP, it's not the case anymore. Foundation schools and basically have their own special, in fact, SFP selection process on 21st of September to 30th of December. So each foundation school does it differently and at a different time. So some foundation schools send you an interview invitation in October, some they may do in November, and some may do in December. So as far as I remember, East Midlands sent me an application, an interview time earlier than West Midlands, but that can vary each year. I can't comment on that. So academic units may set earlier preferences deadlines. So basically check OER and your local foundation school. So they might invite you for interview earlier, or they might ask you for some extra evidence as well. So just make sure you check your academic info application website, and they usually have this information freely available on the website, so you can easily access that. So tips for writing white space questions, please do refer to our website. And we have some tips and previous basically sessions we delivered last year, and hopefully we will deliver more sessions of that kind. But for white space questions, we already have resources on our website. Please, if you haven't already seen that, please refer to our website, stormgroup.co.uk, and you can benefit from that. But overall, I can just as a rough estimate, it's a similar style to writing personal statement. For personal statement, you need to persuade the board, the selection board, that you will be a suitable doctor or a medical student, in fact. But now you need to satisfy them that you'll be a good academic clinician. And a good academic clinician is someone who can work in a team, who can basically manage their personal and clinical job quite well, personal life and clinical job quite well, and can contribute to research at the same time as well. So you need to have qualities such as time management, being efficient, being basically productive, being able to prioritize things. So you need to ensure that you are showing those characteristics, and also make sure always, just as a tip, you'll be a doctor first, and an academic researcher, or whatever you call it, second, or even a medical teacher if you're doing education, SFP as your second job. So the most important thing is you need to be a good doctor, and they're looking for that. And they may ask you, okay, so if you are dealing with something important clinically and something important in your research development, whatever, research career development, which one would you focus if you only had time for one? And you should always say the clinical one, because that's the main reason. That's patient safety, clinical duties, and basically clinical medicine takes priority over everything. So it's quite important for you to be aware of that. So white space questions for SFP 2023, career goals. What are your specific reasons for applying for a special foundation program? And how it's going to contribute to your clinical and research career plans? And if you're interested in the integrated academic clinical pathway, you need to say that why you're interested, if you're going to make a change in practice, if you're interested in improving the quality of care, and how and when and why. So you need to have thought about that before doing your white space questions, and even before doing your interview. So these are always important things to consider. So achievements and the experiences. What is your, sometimes the questions are like that, they're direct. They're just, what is your single best clinical or research achievement? You may have had 10 achievements, but they are looking for the single best one. So you need to choose carefully. And you need to explain why. You need to have rationale behind your suggestion. So give one example, and always support your basically statements with examples and evidence. So it's quite important to be able to. And white space questions, and also we have questions on team working. So as any other interview that you would go for, they will ask you about your team working skills, and if you have had any interaction with others in form of a team before. Because in medicine, like every other job, we work in a team. And in order to be in a team, you need to be nice. You need to be a person who others can trust you, and you can work collaboratively with others, and you need to be polite, you need to be efficient. So these are important things. You can give some examples on your previous involvement in societies at medical school, or if you have had any jobs. I would suggest probably talk about academic stuff, like if you were involved in a research project as a research intern at your medical school or your university. Talk about that one, how you were interacting with people from other departments, researchers. And also you can talk about your medical schools, your hospitals, and how you're getting on with people on the ward, with your supervisors, with your with like nurses on the ward, and with your colleagues. So it's quite important to be aware about teamwork. And how has that helped you to improve your basically standards of care for patients? So vital space question. Also, there are some general questions that are basically in fact, the nature of the job, and they will ask you about sometimes they have different questions on general questions that they would call. They can also some weird questions as well. They will also about your previous special interests, or what you do as a hobby, or understanding basically these are some examples that from previous vital space question. Understanding the nature of dark matter is an example of an unanswered high priority challenge in astrophysics. Please give an example of unanswered high priority challenge in medicine and explain the reasons for your choice. I believe this was one of the questions in the oral application last year, as far as I remember. Something similar to this, not exactly this one, but something similar. So be prepared. So vital space questions for SFP. So it depends on the type of program you're applying to. For research, there are different types of questions. For education and teaching, there are different, and for leadership and management, there are different questions as well. So in fact, almost maybe you should look at that, but probably more jobs are research, and then we have education jobs. There is still quite a lot of them, but it's still less than research. But then we have leadership and management jobs, quite fewer than other two types. So you need to choose your track carefully and focus on that one for vital space questions, writing vital space questions. And we have some program specific ones. So these are different for research and education, teaching theme, and leadership theme. So you need to be prepared for some general academic style questions, like interview style questions or personal statement style, and also some specific ones like research, education, leadership, what's important from each. And okay, interview. So when you received an invitation for an interview, you need to basically be prepared about talking about your vital space questions answers. So if you have talked about a particular society you're a part of, you need to be able to talk about that in the interview as well. And depending on the type of program you're applying to, they may ask for some further evidences, or they may ask different questions with different styles during the interview. And not all academic units of applications hold the interview. That's important to remember. And yeah, so some academic units just rank you based on your vital space questions, your EPM and medical school, and your supporting evidence, and that's all they use. So if you received an interview date, you need to basically be prepared before that. Just make sure if the interview is online or face-to-face, you need to be prepared. If it's face-to-face, I suggest travel there like the day before and get your study leave from medical school and sort things out. And you should keep checking the websites for finding out when is the interview going to be. An interview preparation, you need to look at clinical scenarios, usually management of acutely unwell patients, such as sepsis, MI, PE, anastomotic leak, surgical patients, surgical complications, medical emergencies. So just be prepared. They may ask you about like your approach. So make sure you are very like familiar with your A2E approach, and basically they need to make sure you're a safe doctor. And by the way, just make sure that because you are applying to an academic job, it doesn't mean that they will not consider your clinical skills. So if you come up with some unsafe answers in clinical scenarios, if your approach is very abnormal, is very wrong, and then you are giving like very wrong answers and you're not in the right direction in any way, and you are basically not a safe doctor from their opinion, they have the right to inform your medical school. So you will have some consequences if you, that's not to scare you, but I just mean that you need to take it seriously. You need to um, just imagine you're a doctor and you need to treat that patient. Just don't think that it's an interview, some another dinner, and they want feedback from a medical school. No, it's important. You need to be prepared. Treat it as a, like an semi-OSCE station. So you need to be able to interpret data. So sometimes they ask you to, for your interpretation of statistical data and things like that. So you need to be prepared. I would suggest to have a recap of your biostats lectures from medical school and read about that online. And yeah, just be prepared. Critical appraisal. You need to be able to know different types of bias. You need to know about internal validity, external validity, and various areas of interest in with regards to, in fact, critically appraising literature. And then most importantly, you need to know why SFP and why that particular deanery. If you know a very important professor there, or you have read about the research, you can mention that. But just make sure that person is still accepting your students. If you just say something for random, they don't like that. You just say, I like to work with Professor A or B or C, and that professor may not be working at all, so may have retired already. So you need to make sure that you're not saying just some stuff to please them, but you actually mean that you're interested in research, interested in working with that particular person. So yes, and when you received an offer, you only have 48 hours to accept it or reject it. And when you accept an offer, you will be withdrawn from the national allocation process, so normal foundation program. And don't be alarmed by that. That's something normal. And it's important, when you accept an offer, you cannot change that anymore, and you cannot basically refuse to go on your special assignment. You have to go through that. So basically, because it's a job offer to you, you cannot refuse later. And offer timeline is 11 January is the first round, and then second round, third round, and fourth round. So like this first round, some people, including myself, for example, we got 2 offers. So I accepted one and declined one. So then in the second round, the one that I declined goes to somebody else. And then they decide within 48 hours if they're going to accept or decline. And then it goes like that for 4 rounds until all the programs are filled out. Usually almost all of the programs are filled out, because as you would imagine, it's quite competitive to get an academic job. So eventually, yes, almost all jobs are gone. But you will have, if you don't get an offer in round 1, they will either tell you are in waiting list, or you will basically be rejected. So basically, if you're in the waiting list, then there is a likelihood that you will receive an offer in round 2 or 3 or 4. So yes, please refer to our website, SORN website, and also Medal. And thank you for attending. And any questions, please feel free to ask. And please fill in the feedback form. And Lana, would you please post the, I think you have already done, yes, the feedback form is already in our...
I've posted, but I also sent by email.
Excellent, thank you. It would be great if you could please fill that out. And you have we have our email address here, and that's my personal email address if you need to, but please feel free to send us an email to sorn.contact@gmail.com. And yes, that's all from me. Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so if there's no more questions, I'm just going to stop share and